Hey, what's up everybody? This is Damron. We're playing the new Scalebreaker DLC in Elder Scrolls Online. We've already done the first dungeon. That's going to bring us to the second one, the Lair of Maarselok. And this will once again complete our veteran dungeon guide series. So if you haven't seen any particular dungeon that you need help with, I do have all the guides on my channel for all the veteran dungeons. And if you haven't seen any of my guides before, we will keep this as a complete playthrough. I'll fast forward through the ad portions to keep the video a little bit shorter, and we'll mainly focus on boss mechanics. We'll also add a touch of lore to the dungeon as well as we're progressing through it, which in this dungeon is very, very interesting. And we'll go ahead and dive right in a little bit to the lore, and it goes all the way back to when you played Selene's Web. If you remember when you played Selene's Web, you were actually recruited by Warlock Carandon, who was an Altmer member of the Mages Guild, and he was leading an expedition in order to explore Selene's Web, and he's actually trying to seek the power of Selene, and he wanted to capture her. And at the end of that dungeon you actually capture her soul, and then he travels back to the Tinmar Mountains and continues to study this forest spirit. And he says, you know, we're going to dissect her and examine her body, which is interesting because you'll see later in the dungeon Selene comes back to say the same thing about him, as he is now with you. But unfortunately his studies become disrupted by Maarselok and his corruption, which is really the entire reason you're here, and also why this entire dungeon has this blue look to it, which is caused by the Azureblight. And this history between Carandon and Selene is interesting when you roll up on her as the first boss in the game. Listen to what she has to say.
Now for payment in kind. It's my turn to study your insides, Warlock.
So she's pretty upset about Ural's previous encounter, but nonetheless, you're going to need her help. So let's go ahead and just dive right into the first boss, though, discuss this, and then we'll get back to the lore. So this boss is basically, you know, Selene. She's going to summon a bear and a spider, and this is not that difficult of a fight. You know, you just want to tank, hold the bear and the spider who's going to come later, hold that away from everybody else so their conical attacks, you know, their cleave attacks, don't cause damage to your DPS. That's really the only thing that you need to worry about in the sense of the bear and the spider that come in. Every once in a while there are those AoEs that you saw drop onto the field. Those are easily to identify and easy to escape from. They're very slow. There'll be a couple of them throughout the field of the battle, but you know, you don't really need to worry about that too much. You'll be able to even face that damage if you happen to get hit. It's not going to kill you. Another thing that you're going to see from time to time is Selene will actually do this attack where she has this conical attack going forward, and she will target a certain player. If you're the player that gets targeted by that, what you want to do is just kind of strafe it and keep that from overlapping all the other players that are on the field. That's pretty easy to do as well. So let's go ahead and clean this fight up, and after we finish this fight we'll jump right back into the lore. I will say this is a pretty long dungeon. There are very long areas of ads that you're going to have to fight through. And again, we'll get right back into the lore after we finish this fight. Alright, so that fight is ended, and some of you may be wondering, well, if Carandon had bound her spirit, then how did we ended up fighting her in the dungeon? Well, it turns out that Maarselok, you know, came to the Valley of the Tinmar where he was holding her spirit, and Carandon was actually forced to unbind Selene in order to halt the effects of the Azureblight that was being done by Maarselok. And this was done because Carandon was actually recruited by the wood elf Gadnalon after the Grotwood defenders failed to defend the Elden Tree initially. So Maarselok came, the Grotwood defenders tried to fight him at the center but actually failed. So now they seek the aid of him. The Azureblight is here, and so he's coming in and says, well, I need the help of Selene now, and also recruits you to essentially go against the Azureblight, which is this deathly corruption that is actually going to threaten the Elden Tree. So that's the lore of this dungeon. It's very, very interesting and walks us right into the next boss fight, in which we are going to be fighting the Azureblight Lurcher. So this fight isn't really that bad either. In fact, you're actually going to fight several Azureblight Lurchers, and in essence you're going to start doing a little bit of damage to Maarselok himself. So you're going to see a lot of AoEs, right? A lot of this Azureblight AoEs that affect the field of play here, coming down from Maarselok himself, as well as quite a bit of ads. You don't necessarily want to focus too much on the ads until they get a little bit overwhelming. Hopefully your AoEs will keep that to a minimum, but if you start to see a lot of Spriggans and a lot of the wolves, go ahead and take a few of them out, because if you have a lot of them on the play, that can cause a lot of problems. But you're going to be just basically avoiding all of these Azureblight AoEs while you're trying to damage down the Azureblight Lurker as quickly as possible. Maarselok will also come in from time to time, and he'll do a large, you'll actually see him flying around the arena here, but he'll do a large line attack. It's very easy to spot, but you'll see that this AoE, that's a fire breath that he'll spit across the entire arena. And once you take down the Azureblight all the way to 0, Maarselok will actually sacrifice some of his health to bring the Azureblight Lurcher back to life, so to speak, with his blightedness, and you will eventually fight him down again. So you're going to fight the Azureblight a couple times, and that's essentially it. That's the whole fight. Stay out of the AoEs, watch out for Maarselok's line AoE, take down the ads, and keep your DPS on the Lurcher, and you'll make it through this fight pretty easily. Alright, another boss down. Just want to take this moment to say big thank you to all my supporters thus far. You know, I'm a smaller channel, I have a full-time job and things. I just do this as a hobby. It's something I enjoy doing, making content, showing you guys guides, things like that. I find it very fun, and I've had a huge response from, you know, the community on my channel recently. So big thank you guys to all the support. The channel's been growing. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the interaction. So thank you everyone for continuing to be involved and, you know, liking my videos. If you're new to my videos, this is a new one for you. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like it, and hopefully we'll see you around in the next video. So we'll touch base again at the next boss.
Blue will cover the world. You must join the road. Close to any half full. releasing me from that monster.
There. Writhing mass is the source of the cancer in this cavern. It must be purged.
Leave it. Its proximity is already beginning to taint you.
Destroying it weakens Maarselok's hold.
We're destroying it! Help Selene however you can!
Alright, so we're on to our next boss, and this boss can actually be a little tricky, can be a little difficult. The Azureblight Cancroid, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Cancroid. Anyway, this is a pretty difficult fight if you don't really know what's going on. Understand that the tree, aka the source of the Azureblight, is the boss here, and you can't enter that zone that's around it until you defeat the Lurcher. And when you defeat the Lurcher, which you see kind of roaming around the edge of the tree, then you'll be able to enter that area and do damage to the tree for a short period of time until a new Azureblight Lurcher is spawned. Now there's a lot of other things going on into the fight, and we're going to talk about that. So the Lurcher, when you kill him, will drop a synergy that can be taken to the tree to disrupt the Azureblight for a short period of time. Now until you defeat the Lurcher, he will occasionally be stomping on the ground and leave these large blue circles of Azureblight on the ground, and those will annihilate you. You must stay out of those. Tank needs to keep the Lurcher moving around the edge of the circle in a way that the DPS can maintain damage but stay out of those large AoEs, as you're seeing here. Tank pulls the Lurcher around, and then once you kill the Lurcher, you'll be able to activate the synergy and cleanse the tree, as you see me rolling here and do. Hit the tree. Now we want to burst damage. You also want to save all of your ultimates for these phases, because you really want to maximize damage to the tree, because that is going to be the way you finish the fight. Until you kill the tree, you're going to be repeating everything that we're talking about. You already see a new Lurcher on the board. As soon as the blight is re-imbued into the tree, we can get back out and repeat the process. So let's talk about a few other things that are happening that you need to avoid. The Azureblight tree will also be launching small little projectiles out to the map as well. Those are going to be smaller AoEs that generate to a maximum, and once it hits its max, it does a little bit of damage. It's not going to cause you too many problems. You don't really need to worry too much about it, and they're easily avoidable. Also, you're going to see some small little adds here and there, these little bugs. They do a little bit of damage, but you don't need to worry too much about them. The biggest thing that you have to worry about coming into the fight that come in slowly and eventually start coming in quicker and quicker are the Stranglers. So, and that's actually what's going to be the limiting factor to many of you if you have a lower DPS. The Stranglers, we don't typically focus on them unless they happen to be in the way. But if you get a lot of Stranglers on the field, if you find your DPS to be a little bit slower, then you're definitely going to want to DPS those Stranglers down, because if you get a lot of those on the board, they will destroy you pretty quick, as they're all shooting you at the same time. And if that damage starts stacking on each other with the Lurcher Stomp, with the tree shooting at you, then it becomes very, very difficult. Ideally, you want to be able to take out the tree in 3 or 4 goes at it. If you can do that, then likely you won't really need to focus on the Stranglers too much. An alternate strategy is when the tank is circling around with the Lurcher, have him bring the Lurcher to the Stranglers so your AoEs are actually damaging the Stranglers at the same time. As long as you kind of take everything that I've said into consideration, you shouldn't have too much difficulty getting through this fight. You really want to try to get the tree down in 3 kind of goes at it. That's the best case scenario. If you do that, as you saw here, you don't really have to worry about the Stranglers. If you go beyond 3, if your DPS is a little slower, then you're really going to have to start making sure you burst down those Stranglers. So let's get moving on to the next boss. And again, big shout out to everybody that's been following the channel, liking and subscribing. If you guys like this stuff, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you around in some of the videos. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you guys like the Elder Scrolls stuff. I love playing this game. I love sharing this content with you. So let's get moving on. Alright, so we're moving up on our first encounter with Maarselok himself, and this boss can be very tricky, and there's a lot of strategies out there that I think are not that good. And we're going to give you one that is very, very effective in getting through this boss, because this boss can be very tricky. Some people are trying to tell you to have the tank kind of hold onto the dogs and pull the horvers away from Selene, but that's really not as effective as what we're going to share with you now. So there's a lot going on, so let's talk about what you have to do. Selene is in the middle of the arena, and she is summoning her spiders to climb up the wall. You actually see the green spiders right in front of me climbing up the wall to hit Maarselok, and once enough of them hit Maarselok, he'll actually fall down to the arena in which you can damage him. And you see here how fast that happened because of the strategies I'm going to share with you. So the main thing is you have to protect Selene, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and what happens and what slows Selene down are two things. There are horvers that spawn that will actually hit Selene, and that slows her down, and there's also stranglers that spawn that will pull the spiders down from the wall. So what you want is, you don't want your tank to be worrying about the horvers, okay? This is too much to worry about. Tank needs to be pulling the wolves and pulling the lurchers in and holding on to them. What you want is the healer to stay by Selene, and the healer is going to pay attention to the horvers, and when he or she sees the horvers, just run into them and they'll explode. It'll cause a little bit of damage, but you're a healer, you can take it and heal yourself. So this is really easy for the healer to do. The healer is, that's all you're going to do. You're going to stay near Selene and just run into horvers and heal the group. And now all the tank needs to do is to keep the wolves and keep the lurcher in check, aka keep them near the stranglers. And the stranglers are always going to be spawning below where Maarselok is. So whenever he goes back up into the air, so he's down on the ground now, we're going to damage him. And I'm also trashy, so my weapon broke because I didn't check it at the beginning of the fight. So don't be trashy like me. Make sure you check your weapons. But I always do dumb stuff like that. So anyway, when he goes back up to the wall, find out where he is on the map, because that's where the stranglers are going to spawn, and that's where the tank wants to bring the lurcher and the wolves. So you want to bring those to the stranglers, because DPS, you need to be taking down the stranglers as fast as possible, because they are the ones pulling the spiders down from the wall. The lurchers are stopping them from Selene from spawning them, and the lurchers are pulling them down off the wall. I'm sorry, the stranglers are pulling them down off the wall. So DPS players, you just go to the strangler area, drop your AoEs, burst down the stranglers as fast as possible, let your AoEs take care of the dire wolves and the lurcher. And that way you're maximizing how fast Maarselok is coming down onto the ground, and you're going to be doing damage to him. I think you're going to find this strategy to be very, very helpful. There's a lot of strategies out there talking about the tank keeping the horvers away from Selene. That's just ridiculous. That takes too much effort from the tank. It's too slow, and the healer can just make them explode. Try this method, you're going to like it. So let's finish out this fight, and we'll see you at the final boss.
confident.
He's up there. By that spider. Oh, it's everywhere. Hurry.
He's much stronger here. He's trying to wrest control, Selene.
Finish this before I can't see anyone else. Use my lips to burst the light, just like before.
Alright, so we're on to the final boss of this very long dungeon, the Lair of Maarselok. Beautiful dungeon. I really enjoyed it. It's very, very blue at times, but it's very, very fun. So here we are. We're going to finish off the last 50% of Maarselok. And this actually isn't that difficult of a fight. So let's talk about everything that's going on. So he does a lot of attacks, okay? One, he's going to do a conical headbang kind of in front of him. Very easy to avoid. You saw that. He's also going to smash down his wings every once in a while. That does quite a bit of damage. But, you know, it's not going to kill you. I don't even have a lot of health, and it's not going to kill you. Okay, the things that are going to kill you is his charge attack and his fire attack. His charge attack is easily noticeable. He says he's about to charge. When he does that, just move to the side. If you are in his path, that's an instant death. So keep that in mind. And then another thing he's going to do is he's going to do a fire breath attack in which he'll start on one side and kind of sweep all the way around. And that will certainly kill you as well. And then you either going to have to roll dodge that and time it really well or block it. Okay, if you block it, you'll survive it. You don't have to worry about trying to roll dodge it. Roll dodging, it's kind of risky. And he's also going to be launching these AoEs onto the ground as well, which you're seeing there. Not the wing attack, but those circular AoEs that are coming in. He's been doing this the entire dungeon. You've seen it. These are Azureblight launching out of the sky and doing small AoEs. If it hits you, don't worry about it. It's going to cause a little bit of damage, but it's not going to kill you. But again, easily avoidable, so just avoid them when you can. The other thing that he's going to do is he's going to place an Azureblight seed on a random player, and you have seen these cleansing circles throughout the dungeon or throughout the arena of this fight right here, this green circle, and the dungeon introduced you to this Azureblight earlier in the game, in which if you don't cleanse yourself, enemies will be spawning in until you do so. So whoever gets you know, cursed, you need to go to those green circles and activate a synergy and get rid of that Azureblight. And that's really all there is to it. This isn't that difficult of a fight, so if you just kind of stay out of the AoEs, do damage what you can, the only things you really got to worry about are the charge attack and the sweeping, you know, fire attack that he does. If you avoid that, you're going to be just fine. So that's it for the non-hard mode. We'll try to get the hard mode up soon. And so let's finish this fight off, and we'll talk about the monster set at the end. Alright, so Maarselok's down, the Blight is cured, the Elden tree is saved, and maybe now Karandon and Selene can go back at it to see who's going to dissect who. I don't know. So that's the end of the dungeon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you like my stuff. Big thanks to everybody that's shown me support. The channel's been growing. Really appreciate it. Thanks again to everybody tuning in, telling your friends about the guides. It's really been fun to see the channel grow. So let's quickly have a look at the monster set that you're going to get from this dungeon. Alright, so you're going to get the Maarselok set, adds stamina, and when you bash an enemy, you spew a cone of corruption, dealing 10,500 disease damage over 4 seconds, and your damage is increased by 5% for each negative effect that enemy has, up to 150%. So, seems like it actually could be a interesting DPS thing to try out. Maybe can give it a go, but you know, it does seem kind of interesting. I'd like to test it out and see what kind of DPS that can spew. So, I hope you guys liked it. If you do, like, subscribe, hit the bell for new videos, and we'll see you next time.